everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for one of our weekly webinars here at the Retirement Group. My name is Samantha, and I am in Client Services here. In just a moment, we're going to be joined by our advisor, Tyson Maybar, who's going to be speaking to AT&T employees who may be witnessing fluctuating interest rates and wondering how those rates are going to be affecting not only your retirement, but your pension. Tyson will be on to discuss this and give some clarity to you and also to address any concerns you may have. Before Tyson comes on, however, I would like to just very quickly remind you that although we work very closely with both active and retired members of AT&T, the Retirement Group is not affiliated nor endorsed whatsoever by AT&T. We are a completely independent group of financial advisors. Throughout this presentation, I will enter some links into the chat. Please keep an eye on that. They will guide you to our education center where you can view a full library of all of our past recordings, as well as a link to book an appointment with an advisor after this presentation, whether that be Tyson Maybar himself or another advisor here. And after Tyson's presentation, I will jump back on with him very quickly to ask him any of the questions you may have entered into the Q&A chat throughout his presentation. Please feel free to ask away. It is 100% anonymous, and we will answer as many questions as we can, time permitted, of course. And with all of that out of the way now, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker, Tyson Maybar. Hey, Tyson.
Thank you, Sam, for the introduction, and thank you, folks, for attending our webinar series today. My name is Tyson Mayvar, one of the AT&T focused retirement advisors for the Retirement Group. And on today's webinar series, we're going to cover the changes to the interest rates that affect the AT&T pension lump sum payouts and actually go through an example of what we saw last year, how it impacted one of our clients, talk more specifically about how these interest rate changes affect the various pension payout options based on which pension you're on at AT&T. Those of you who aren't as familiar with our company, the Retirement Group's an independent financial planning organization that specializes in helping corporate employees plan for and transition into retirement. We also manage retirement assets for our clients, many of whom came from AT&T, as we've been helping people from AT&T retire for over 30 years now. We have a variety of complementary services that we encourage you to take advantage of, especially if you haven't done so already. One of which, probably the most important one, is the retirement cash flow analysis. It's a complimentary service we do for everybody at AT&T, or at least offer to do it. And the goal here is to evaluate different decisions, such as different retirement dates, different dates to leave AT&T, different pension options, whether or not to pay off debt when you leave the company, whether to take the lump sum or the annuity. There's a variety of different decisions you'll have, and all of them, we believe it's essential to compare through a cash flow analysis. And we encourage you to take advantage of that, especially if you've never done it or if it's been over a year since you've had us do this for you. Let us know so we can update this plan or put one together for you so that you can have a better idea of what are some of the potential benefits and detriments of different decisions along your transition from the company. Also, we have a LinkedIn page where we publish the webinars that we host, and the QR code at the bottom of the slide will get you to our LinkedIn page if you're not following us there already. Now, before we talk about the pension interest rates, let's talk about the look-back period. This is observed differently from company to company, but at AT&T, regardless of which plan you're on, whether you're Legacy T, SBC, non-management, regardless of which plan you're on, they have this look-back period where they're going to evaluate your lump sum based on interest rates in the past. And AT&T chose to use the November corporate bond interest rates for purposes of calculating lump sum benefits for the defined benefit pension plans. So there are some cash balance plans, and this is where it's critical to understand which plan you're on, and that's something that we will help you with if we do your cash flow analysis or even just have a quick phone call. And the defined benefit plans, which is most pensions at AT&T for most employees, they're going to use last November's interest rates for this year's lump sum calculations. In other words, if you retire from the company and more importantly, take your pension this year in 2023, they're going to calculate your lump sum based on November of 2022's corporate bond interest rates. Similarly, if you retire and take your pension in 2024, they will be using the November 2023 interest rates, which of course we do not know yet here in October of 2023, but we should know them within the next couple months. And we track data in an effort to predict to the best degree we possibly can what's going to happen to interest rates and whether this year is going to be more or less favorable than next year for taking your lump sum. Now, that might encourage you to change your retirement date, or it might encourage you to defer the election of your pension if you already have a selected retirement date, or maybe it was a surplus situation. These interest rates are critical to watch, and you can also plug these rates into the Net Benefits website pension modeler to see what the actual dollar impact is going to be on your lump sum given assumptions about the interest rates. Now let's look at these rates and talk about what's happened this year. So in yellow here, we see the actual interest rates for 2023, which were based off November of 2022. You can see there's three of them, first, second, and third segment rate. These are based on short, intermediate, and long-term corporate bonds. By far, the most relevant of these three is the second segment interest rate, carries the most rate in the lump sum calculation. And you can see September, we have data for now because we're at the end of October, and I think it was the 24th or 25th of this month, the company published the September rates. Although these rates are not relevant for your pension calculation, we think they are relevant to pay attention to because we can now see that rates have climbed on all three segments since last November. In other words, if rates stayed flat between now and November, we would expect for all defined benefit pension lump sums at AT&T to drop come January when the new rates go into effect. We also show on this table what's happened since 2017. We saw rates actually go up in 2018, which meant pension recipients that took the lump sum in 2019 had relatively high interest rates compared to the next 3 years. 2020, 2021, and 2022 were very favorable times to take a lump sum, with the bottoming of interest rates in 2021. So that was a time when we saw a lot of people voluntarily leaving to take the lump sum. And since then, we've seen increases that are to the tune of somewhere around 2.5%, at least as far as the second segment goes, which is roughly about a 25 to 30% drop on lump sums that we've seen in the last couple of years for our clients from AT&T. Now, does that mean the lump sum doesn't any longer make sense? Not for everybody. There's been many people that are still wanting to take a lump sum. And of course, the silver lining on that is that safer investments like fixed income investments, bonds, money markets, and CDs are all paying substantially more interest now. So it's easier to produce income from investments than it was 2 years ago. But this is a decision that varies from individual to individual, and there's a lot of different variables that we would want to look at before identifying what's likely the best option for you. Life expectancy, risk tolerance, tax bracket status, your willingness to work after AT&T. There's a lot of different issues that we want to come to terms with, and this is the importance of the cash flow analysis to start to weigh these different variables in your specific plan to ultimately, hopefully, come up with the best possible pension distribution option given your circumstances with the highest degree of certainty you're going to get the most money possible out of that distribution option. Now, here's another chart that shows something similar to what we just looked at. Essentially, not going to let me zoom in, but it looks like showing interest rates for the last 2 years on those three segments. You can see segment 2 and 3 have moved together pretty closely. Segment 1 was substantially lower a couple of years ago, but segment 1 has actually come up to be almost as high as both segment 2 and 3. And all three segments you can see have climbed pretty substantially in the last couple of years. Prior to that, we would have seen the opposite, where rates were, for the most part, dropping. And for the most part, it was for the previous 40 years. Although they fluctuate, we've really seen a pretty massive increase in interest rates over the last 2 years, at least as far as what they do toward everybody's lump sum payouts on the AT&T pension. Now, we did an example here to show you, if you log into the Net Benefits website and run a projection, it's going to show you the assumptions on the projection, and you can actually dig deeper into the detailed assumptions. There's two blue links here. One says assumption details, and that'll show you the actual interest rate that were used for your benefit projection. Then they also have this calculation details link that will produce a PDF that goes into every piece of information relevant to calculating your pension. And so we actually have an example of that we're going to show here in a minute. But what I want you to remember is the severe impact of rising interest rates on the defined benefit pension lump sums. And you can go back to a memo that came from AT&T last year in 2022. I said the lump sum option could decrease by more than 50% and more than 15%, and in some cases as much as 30%. We definitely saw that. We don't expect necessarily for that to happen again in 2024, but we are expecting it to be very likely that lump sums are going to be going down again in 2024. We just don't quite know how much just yet. All right, let's go to this example. This was somebody's PDF that was produced from that calculation details link that I just mentioned. This is a Legacy T individual. ALM stands for AT&T Legacy Management Program. And you can see there's this cash balance number here. For them, it was $688,000, but that's not their actual lump sum. And if you were to just go to the summary page of your pension in the net benefits website, that's what you would see as the lump sum. Fortunately, in almost everybody's case, their lump sum is actually more than that projected cash balance amount. And you can see below that, it shows the single life annuity payable on that date would be, in this person's case, $3,532 a month roughly. And then it shows the interest rates that are used to calculate what is called the qualified 417E minimum lump sum. That is the actual lump sum for a legacy management individual and also for any individual with a defined benefit plan. So the non-bargain program is a very common management pension plan, a defined benefit plan. And then we also have most of the craft employees on the various districts having a defined benefit lump sum as well. Well, look how much extra that was. It was $810 compared to $688, about $122,000 more based on the conversion associated with these rates. And then below it also shows the factors used, essentially the relative difference between the annuity and the lump sum. For this person, it was 135. You multiply their monthly annuity by 135 to get that one-time lump sum. Well, that was using the 2021 interest rates. So that person would have had to retire by November 30th as a legacy management person, commence their benefit December 1st of last year in order to avoid the losses associated with rising interest rates in 2023. We ran another scenario with this individual, and you can see in this case, we used, I believe these were the June or July of last year interest rates. So we didn't know November's rates. We were just using the data that we had available at the time. And that showed a lump sum of substantially less, $578,000. I think the first one was about $810,000. That for this individual is about $232,000 less on their lump sum as a result of rising rates. And we actually know that rates continue to go up from June to November. So they would have experienced more losses than we're showing here had they not retired last year. And look at this factor. It was 135 on the last one. Now with these rates, it was only 96, meaning that you multiply the annuity by 96 to get the one-time lump sum. The higher rates go, the lower this factor goes. And that is how the lump sums fall when interest rates go up over time. You know, unfortunately, what we've seen, not only in my experience with the retirement group, but statistically, 74% of Americans over the age of 50 don't have a written plan for their retirement. Please, folks, don't be one of these statistics. It's far too often we get a call from somebody when it's way too late to put a plan together. There's no downside in putting a plan together other than the time it takes you. And we are very confident you will find this to be a very valuable investment of your time. If you're willing to spend a few minutes with us, won't cost you anything other than some of your time. And all we ask is if you get some value from that exercise, maybe refer us to some of your coworkers so that we can continue to grow our business and our reputation in the AT&T community. If you'd like to schedule a call or just have some questions, you can call us at the home office at 800-900-5867. You can email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. Or you can also take a picture of this QR code here on the left to get on to myself or one of my colleagues' calendars who understands the AT&T retirement strategies and benefit rules, so we can start to put a plan together for you and verify that you're not making any of the common and highly detrimental mistakes in transitioning from AT&T. Also, here's that LinkedIn page QR code. If you're not following us there yet, I encourage you to do so, as that's where we publish these webinars that we do periodically. With that, we're going to wrap it up, unless, Sam, if we have any questions on today's webinar, we have a little bit of time to take a few.
Hey, Tyson. Yes, we actually got a couple great questions I want to make sure you answer. The first one, I'm really considering taking the annuity from AT&T given how much interest rates are fluctuating. Do you think that's a wise choice, or should I take the lump sum and then buy an annuity?
Yeah, great question. Not nearly enough information to give good advice on it. We need to know a lot more about your situation. I mentioned some of the variables that we look at as advisors when picking what option is likely going to produce the best outcome for individuals, but we've got to run a cash flow analysis. That's first and foremost what I'd recommend. And, depending on some of those factors being, if you're going to go back to work after you leave AT&T, that's one reason I see a lot of people taking a lump sum, because if you don't need income, why pay taxes on money that you don't need? That is a big reason, especially people in a surplus condition or people that are leaving because they're being forced to move if they don't leave and want to stay with their job. A lot of people are taking a lump sum purely just to earn interest on a tax deferred basis on that money and avoid extra income that will become taxable if you choose to take the annuity. You also need to consider the option to defer the election of your pension, and that can be done for a lot of people, but it can't be done for everybody. So I would encourage that person to give us a call, and we just ask some questions to know a little bit more about their situation.
Thank you, Tyson. The link to the cash flow analysis is in the chat, by the way, if anybody wants to take advantage of that. Number two, I'm retiring at the end of the year, but I wanted to defer my pension until the rates are more favorable. Can I do that?
Potentially. Most people can. The two exceptions are, the big ones at least, are if you are already over age 65, you cannot defer the election of your pension. You have a one-time chance to take the lump sum, which is directly after your retirement date. And if you do not do that, then you're forced into an immediate annuity. The other exception is if you are a non-management employee. Many of the craft plans require you to take a lump sum within 90 days of your last day at the company. And if you do not do so, you are forced into the annuity, although you don't have to take the annuity right away. There's just a one-time window to take a lump sum. Other than that, pretty much everybody else can defer the election of their pension. And to your point, that could be something to consider if you don't need the income, but you would also want to run some projections on how much money you're making in your pension by deferring the election and compare that to how much money you could make if you took your pension. For example, investing in a CD or money market on the very most conservative investment available, which are now paying north of 5%. If your pension's only growing by 3 to 4%, but you can earn 5% very, very safely outside of the pension, that's something you want to consider as well. We call that the opportunity cost of leaving the money in the plan. So again, 65 or a specific plan, I would encourage that person to call us and we'll verify for sure.
Got it. Thank you. It's a good tip. Last one, Tyson. Trying to prepare for the tax implications, what should I consider when choosing the annuity or the lump sum?
Great question. Remember that both of those are taxable on the same tax tables, ordinary income tax brackets. Whether you take the lump sum, roll it over to an IRA and start withdrawing money, or take the annuity, that is, given that your total income for the year was the same. So the more income you have in a given year, the higher your taxes are going to go up. Again, another reason some people will take the lump sum or defer the election of the annuity if they plan on going back to work after AT&T and potentially pay a lower tax rate by waiting to have that income for not only when you need it, but when you're in a lower tax bracket. Other than that, we would want to know more about your situation. So does your spouse work, and how long are they potentially planning to continue working? Are you going back to work? What other sources of income do you have? Are you going to be starting Social Security? All of those things affect your tax bracket status and could have an impact on what could be a better way to take your pension, just being cognizant of your overall situation to try to be as tax efficient as you possibly can, not just necessarily right away, but over your lifetime. We're trying to minimize your lifetime taxes. And in some cases, it actually makes sense to pay more taxes now to have a substantial tax savings in the future. But just remember that if you take the lump sum, as long as you roll that over correctly, you will not pay any immediate taxes in most situations. The unique situation where that's not the case is if you are a highly compensated employee. Usually your income is over, close to 300,000 a year. It's possible you could have a non-qualified pension or a supplemental pension that they do make you pay taxes right out of the gate. So situation that we don't run into, probably less than 5% of the time, but most people are able to roll over and defer taxes on all of their lump sum when they leave the company and take that pension out.
Alrighty, Tyson, that was it. Anything else you'd like to add before we end today?
No, thanks, Sam, for the help today. And thank you, folks, for attending our webinar series. We hope you all have a good, safe rest of your week. And we look forward to hopefully talking to you all soon.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Tyson.